Alright, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we have a 21 Nokuhd offensive, and for the week cycle we are Fortified, Bursting, and Explosive. This is a major week for us as a Disc Priest. We can really prove ourselves and earn our keep. Obviously with Bursting, that's going to be our Mass Dispel. The best thing you can do really is like precast the Mass Dispel and really try and prevent many ticks of the damage from going out. And then the major play for us is Explosive. It's mighty annoying. I don't think really anyone likes this affix, but I do think it's there in order to hone your skills when it comes to targeting. So I think if you can approach it with a little bit of sport and a good attitude, it can improve your gameplay. It's not just to annoy you. I think it's there to actually teach you as well. And what we notice now as a Disc Priest with Mindbender, we often are having to switch targets to snipe that extra torment. So I think it's just good to practice this, and there are a couple of things you can do to improve your chances. I think the biggest thing you can do is change your UI to help see them better, and you can do that with KUI. I have mine stand out as a white color compared to my mobs, which are red. I also put a glow on the nameplate of the explosive, and with that glow I tie in a small audible. So I kind of have all these different facets to help me manage them. And also we are in Discord together, so whenever I'm going into a ramp or if I need help so that I can heal, I'm just calling it out. My allies are there to pick it up. I do think the best structure for handling explosives is if you take a standard DPS layout profile and reverse it. So your top DPS should be responsible of the least amount of orbs, and your least DPS should be responsible for the most amount of orbs. That's why it's you as the healer. So anyway, before we get going into this key, one thing I want to talk about is, let's see if I can pull it up here, our schism. So within KUI nameplates, you can color nameplates based on a debuff present. And now that we're having to switch targets a lot for our execute range for our torments, and also since we're having to switch targets a lot to manage our orbs, I think the best way to find your schism or find your way back to schism is just by changing the nameplate color to a purple. And I found that's been really useful and really helpful. But by default, KUI nameplates does not have schism built in, so I'm sorry about that. But it is really easy to edit the LUA code to build a list looking like whatever you want. You just go within the KUI nameplates target helper folder. There is a notepad, it's just text, called auras. And you open that up and you'll see Discipline Priest is the first one on the list, coincidentally. And you just want to add schism in the same manner as other auras. And you do have to attach the spell ID, which I don't have here, but here, let me pull it up just in case anyone needs it. So the spell ID on Schism is 214621. Just type that in. It's really easy. It takes 10 seconds. Even if you don't know what you're doing, it's really easy to do that. So changing them to purple is really, really nice. And not only will this help with explosives, but when we're having to bounce around picking out our executes, having a purple nameplate for our Schism will really help us return to that target. And then one other thing before we get going, I changed my trinkets and I also changed my flask. So I was watching someone else's discipline video and noticed, like I guess I could say I was doing it wrong. So the entire purpose of my build, and I'll flash that up here too, the entire purpose of my build is just to go for DPS. And I think as a Disc Priest, when you're playing your rotation properly, you don't need extra defensives. And also, with Discipline, a strong offense is a good defense. So I think it's kind of tit for tat where you want to spend your points, but I vote going for a DPS build just because that's also a nice defense. So anyway, that's my build. And then my trinkets, what I was saying is I've put my feather back in. He's a little bit low level right now, so I'm working on that. But I think feather with your flask is going to be the best combo for DPS. And then for my potion, I switched over to the Phial of Glacial Fury. I didn't know that was there. I'm really not the best at this game. I've been using the Tepid Versatility one. I think that's fine, but for DPS, I think this is a little bit better of a choice. So that's what I've done. And then when it comes to procs, so I think in the past we didn't really deal much with procs, or the ones that we had were randomized. So there wasn't really much skill to it. But now we have these opportunities to maximize on procs, and I think we can outskill them. So what I'm saying is I'm really not using my penance unless it's a proc, unless maybe it's to spread a dot as an opener. And I'm not really using my shield unless it's buffed by my 4-piece. So I don't think using those spells and those globals outside of those windows where they're buffed is worthwhile. I think instead of using an unbuffed spell, something like Smite or Solace would be better just for the DPS. So I'm really only dropping globals there if they're buffed. And I brought in this new little Weakar. Let me see if I can show you here. So it's going to be right by my Schism in a second here. So it's when my shield comes off cooldown, I get a little dot. And what that dot is, it's an indicator when I have shield available and it's buffed. So that's just kind of like my new little shield monitor. And on the subject of shields, what I'm noticing more and more as I play Disc is within our Shadow Covenant window, we need to reatone. And there's about 2 ways to do that. You can either drop a really nice buffed shield after your first penance, and I try and default there just to maximize DPS. But if this is a moment where you absolutely need Shadow Covenant for healing, after your first penance, you'll just work in a Radiance. And that's really the best way to do it. You're going to get full coverage through your window. So if your strict opener is Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance, at that point, you work in your Radiance. So it's pretty much after you put your first Mind Blast on cooldown and your first Penance on cooldown. Again, those have to be first in rotation just for the timing of things. So you put those out, put them on cooldown, and then you're open to drop a shield or a Radiance. And I think you'll see a lot of good examples of that here. I've been working in my shields in the middle of Shadow Covenant a lot more. I am kind of a troll. I run Crystalline Reflection. I think it's great. There's an offensive aspect to it, a defensive aspect to it, and it really goes well with Rapture, and it really goes well with our 4-piece. So that's just what I like doing. Again, I'm voting for DPS. I think a lot of people like the Vampiric Embrace, and more power to you if you like it, but I would rather go Mind Games since it plays off of my Shadow Covenant, and that's just what I want to do. So again, before we get going here, just to state the ideal rotation, the minimums we're aiming for within our Schism Shadow Covenant window, we have to get at least 4 Torments, and we're aiming for 5, and that will come from an Execute. And then the big one, the hardest one to miss, the hardest one to drop, is a second Dark Reprimand proc, Harsh Discipline proc. So that's where a lot of our damage comes from. Dark Reprimand is hella powerful, and the only thing you have to do to ensure that second Dark Reprimand proc is ramp properly with your Harsh Discipline, which is a full proc with a +1. And I do think a lot of times when you need to get into your window quicker, it's totally fine to accept that you're dropping a second proc and just get into your window for the DPS or the healing. I do think the best Shadow Covenant is one that can mold to the situation and adapt to what's going on. And I think that's where the real skill of the skill is going to come in. But being able to use it appropriately for whatever situation to win. So I think there's a lot of versatility within it. As soon as you get your first 5 spells out of the way, you have quite a bit of wiggle room to cast what you want when you want. And just as like a little bit of an insight into my thought process when it comes to my rotation. So after I get my first 5 out of the way, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance, at that point I'm casting something like Mind Games or Divine Star. I'm not reaching for another torment spell because I'm trying to work in one of the other spells just to give me a fraction of a moment to read my dot timer. So I work in something like a Divine Star or Mind Games because I'm just giving myself a second to gauge the duration on my dot to see if I can go into another torment spell without loss. So I think that's a really good strategy to kind of bounce back and forth between torment spell, non-torment spell, and that's just to give yourself a moment of time to see if your dot needs refreshing, which does need to happen in your window. So I think that's all I want to say for this video. Oh, one last thing I'll add. So our tank Yasmin is the one who came up with this weak aura. It's kind of an offshoot of another one, so I'm not sure whose I will reference, but I will link it down below. But my action bar HUD here is just the add-on called Dominoes. I think it's best just to use actual action buttons. So, and then I have a weak aura here that glows these 3 spells, and that's because I need all 3 of these to light up and glow, cueing my DPS window is ready. So I will link this, and I think in practice the best thing to do is use it very selectively, just as like a thought experiment. If I have every single button on my bar glow when it's active, it no longer has the same utility. It's not really serving the same purpose of getting your attention and standing out. So again, I do think it's best to use it sparingly. I think on these 3, that's a really wonderful way to use it. And I also put it on life. I think that's obvious. You want to have that on life. And then my PI down here, that's actually just a little bit different. But I'll try and link all that. All my stuff is current. And let's go ahead and clip over. All right, so here we go. It's actually been a couple days since I've recorded that previous section, but I think that's all right. And in the top of a dungeon, you always want to be planning where your PIs are going to go. And I think in this group, it kind of does bounce around. But some things to consider are who's doing the most damage, who has 4-piece or not, what their IO is, what their item level is, things like that.
5,
but I think I
4,
favor the monk just because he's in Discord helping
2,
keep me accountable.
1.
And here we go. So this first section, since we are fortified, it is pretty difficult, I would say. I don't know how other people feel about it, but I think the trash up here is kind of hard to deal with. So there's no holding back on cooldowns, and dropping our buffed shield from 4-piece is a really nice power play. And in pulls like this, you and the DPS are going to be more vulnerable, so dropping that shield on yourself, always a good play. So PI's out on the mage to try it out. And in Discord, I was calling for a little bit of help just so I could get my rapture out. Trying to get all my dots out. And here goes my ramp finally. So I work in a radiance at the top just for coverage. And in a pull like that, I think I got all of my torments, but I might have dropped my second penance. And although I don't like dropping that second penance, sometimes you just gotta get into your Shadow Covenant window. And we do have Mindbender queued up and ready for the next pull, but I'm not going to use him here. Yeah, and right there you'll see I dropped my single shield on myself. And when it comes to those buffed shields from 4-piece, I really try only casting those on an atonement. I think it's worthwhile to get that extra boost from your mastery, especially on those buffed shields. And one thing to note about these pulls, if you notice the color differences in my nameplates, I have that bird as a dark gray color, and that's because I really need to keep an eye on his position as it relates to my own. And I have the Lance Master as a gray color as well, for the same reason, and that's because he cleaves. So I've taken all the gray colors out of my nameplate system, unless it's mobs that I need to be like nowhere near. So PI just came available. And also one thing to note, I'm noticing more and more at the end of a dungeon when I check my DPS profiles, Mind Blast is going to be our main DPS driver. So run Mind Blast always when you're in Shadow Covenant, when you're not in Shadow Covenant. Alright, there's our PI. And right here, I almost got in a lot of trouble, but thankfully our monk was paying attention and helped me out. I think it was the angle of my camera, but I couldn't really see where that bird was, and he was fixated on me and took a bite. Also, as a sequence, I'm not sure how well I was doing it here, but I had kind of forgotten what our two-piece does. So as a sequence, I might go Schism, Mind Blast, Penance, Shield, and then Mind Games. So Shield will buff our next spell, and Mind Games is a really nice hard hitter for us. So I think I've been trying to do that now, but I might not have been doing it here. But I think casting a shield within your window is ideal because you get, you know, one penance at the front of your window. So you penance, shield, Mind Games. The elements answer to me. Ouch. So this, I would say, may be partially my fault. I think I was calling in Discord just to pick up orbs for a second. I was desperately trying to ramp and get into Shadow Covenant, and I saw an orb go off, and then it led to a death. So, hard to say. I mean, I do think orbs are the responsibility of everyone, but maybe my opener there was a little bit selfish, led to a death. Man, and those bleeds just really hurt. So this is just about done here. Boss is upcoming. We have one more group. And I think we drop one more PI, especially since this is Fortified. Let's see what I do here.
Five, 4, 3, 2.
And it's just so hard on my mana. Yep, there goes Win. There's PI. And the only time I use Penance without a proc is if I'm just using it to spread my dots as an opener. So as a really strong opener, you might dot followed by a Penance, and then get into your Harsh Discipline ramp. So this looks like a perfect ramp. Let's see if I get all my spells. Just picked out my 5th Torment off of that execute range. And I got 2 Penance. So that's exactly what we want. And I had that really nice buffed shield locked and loaded. But again, I don't want to drop it on someone who's not atoned. So for the tank there, I cast a flash heal and then capped it with that shield. My mastery, I'm looking at it now, is only at 14%. But that's, you know, that's a little bit extra that goes on that shield. Alright, so here we have boss, non-tyrannical boss.
2, 1.
And that's total bullshit. If anyone wants to replay that, I crossed hitboxes with our tank there. That should have cleared. What happened? So there's a really nice opener for this boss. Rapture, just to get it rolling. And our monk was simping for me a little bit, so I lined up a grip for him since he was helping out with the first cannon. And I believe I got all 5 torments there. Or 4 torments, I don't know what I did. PI went to the mage this time. Sometimes I like just kind of sharing the PI. A lot of different situations, I don't know, call for different plays, like someone might not have a cooldown available, or if I see someone get into a cooldown and I just need to drop PI, they might get it first. Put in a little bit of a precarious spot there. As you are ramping your harsh discipline, a great sequence is just to spam your Mind Blast. Put both of those on cooldown, that'll ramp your harsh discipline. And here goes, I think, my final ramp. And when it comes to expiation, especially in a Shadow Covenant Schism window, I'm not casting a torment spell unless there's 6 seconds of dot. I think that talent is very, very strong, especially in that window. So I'm just recasting my dot. I think it's worth the global. But first area done, we're fine, moving on. And this next area is quite a bit harder, I would say. Like, I think the trash is pretty nasty if you're not on top of it. And even the boss, non-tyrannical, is still pretty nasty. And I will say, if anyone is watching this and thinking how it might apply to a tyrannical week, I think it's about the same. The rotation and the sequence of spells is just about the same, but there's just a little bit less pressure here. And for these guys with the shield, I am a Blood Elf, so Arcane Torrent, that really helped out there. Desperately trying to get my ramp going. There's PI. Okay, my ramp is ready. Getting some atonements out. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant Schism, Mind Blast Penance. And when it's AoE, I do try and favor my Divine Star. It is going to be our best AoE spell. So I don't move it down the priority list, I cast it early. And with these pulls, a lot of times you can pick up your 5th torment, your extra torment, by executing the totem. Because it has this window below 20% where it kind of sticks or something, and you can often pick up an extra torment on it. Open with barrier, and again, just like the front half of this dungeon, these trash pulls are deceptively hard. It's a Hail Mary. Drop all your cooldowns. There we got Lust. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast Penance, Star. Picked up my 5th Torment. And that was a great ramp. And the group there got a little bit low. I'm not sure if that happened after all of my spells or before, but possibly if I had worked in a Radiance into that window, they wouldn't have dropped so low. But I think it happened after my window. So it looks like we have PI, we have Pain Sup, we have Rapture. What do we do? There's PI. Going into Rapture just to help soften this opening. Pain Sup just to help me ramp. Here we have a good ramp, atoning the group. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance.
5,
Divine
4,
Star at the top.
3,
Working a Radiance just to make sure I'm doing my job. And you'll also see in party there are white dotted lines going out. That is the targeted spells weak aura showing where their attack is going. Most of them are kicked, but it is nice sometimes just to see where damage is going, because if you have a procced shield, it's not a bad idea to place it there. Alright, so with these guys, there's not much to it. You just want to pump your DPS. You do not want to stand with your friends. And we also have the targeted spells weak aura here to show where the lightning goes. It's a great place for a shield. Oh, me. And that shield really helped out. Here's my DPS window. And I think I got everything I needed. On my torments, 2 penance,
4,
and dropped a really nice shield on the tank there. There's another targeted spell on the Warlock, and that is a perfect time for a shield. And I always use my single dispel on myself, just so I can get a drink off. But here goes another PI, dropping a barrier. And although the boss coming up is kind of difficult, it's not a fight where barrier is going to be that useful. So drop it on the trash. Here's my ramp. I pick up my 5th torment off that totem.
Final totem crumbles. Now take down the avatar of the storm.
And that was all of my torments and 2 large penance. So I do run Crystalline Reflection. I know I've mentioned that before. I think it's very powerful. I know it's like a controversial opinion, but if you run Crystalline Reflection, you have to play your shields to make it worthwhile. And a benchmark I try and hit with my shields is at least 1 million in CR. So as an opener here, we want to Rapture to cover the Lightning Strike. I'm really only tracking 2 items with my bigwigs, and it's this Lightning Strike for my Rapture and the Storm. So for the Storms, all we need is our Mindbender, so Rapture is great for those. High priority to get all of these orbs, get the buff. And I'm trying to just bank my Harsh Discipline proc. And we're only going to get 2 of these. So the first one we wall. Mind Blast Penance, Mind Games. Another Mind Blast. I work in a Radiance late. And I missed that second Dark Reprimand, but that's okay. Group was a no real threat there. And when it comes to your single shields, which are buffed from your penance, it's always a great idea to throw that on yourself, if no one else. So when these strikes go out, I didn't shield anyone there, but try and shield at least yourself. It's too good of a spell to not use. And we have a Lightning Strike coming up. I have no Rapture, but I am trying to atone everyone before the strike goes off, so I can at least flood them with some atonement. And the Storm is coming up. I'm doing everything I can to bank this Harsh Discipline. Ramping some atonements. And for this one, I Pain Sup myself. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism, Mind Blast, Penance. Working a Radiance early. Mind Games. Mind Blast. Shadow Word Death. Man. And that Dark Reprimand, I was a little bit late on it too, but that's okay. I think when you work a Radiance into your window, it's more likely you're going to miss your second Dark Reprimand. And we have Rapture back available. Going ahead and tossing it out for this AoE strike. And boss is just about over, but to get the last little bit of DPS that I can, throwing out that Mindbender. Alright, and that was boss. So even if you were tyrannical, the cadence or the order of spells is just about the same. You always want to Rapture for the lightning strike, and then have a full ramp ready of Atonements and Harsh Discipline for your Mindbender for the storm.
Clan Ukel has allied with Clan Nokuhd. Today, they will regret that alliance.
And I have watched this ahead of time, but I kind of forget what goes on here, so let's see.
Teera and Maruuk
Open with a Penance to spread my dot.
these grave robbers and return
PI on our monk.
to their rest before they are forced to fight in Balakar's name.
Here goes Shadow Covenant. Working the Divine Star early. And that Shadow Covenant was quite off standard. I had to work in a flash heal, but that's just what I had to do. So I'm not sure if we meant to get those birds. Let's see how this goes. I think the mage took some ground damage there. Okay, we have Mind Bender again. Let's see if I play him or if I hold. Yeah, there he goes. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Mind Blast, Dark Reprimand. Picked out a 5th Torment. And I would have to confer with Yasmin. I'm not sure if that pull was totally intentional, but we managed. Alright, and for pulls like this, especially Fortified, it's great to get a couple of dots out and then go straight into a Rapture. Ouch. So I do remember what happened here, and in Discord I was calling for assistance with the orbs so I could shield everybody, and some orbs were missed. So I don't know how you want to look at that. Possibly you could say that was like my fault for not prioritizing the orbs, but I was calling in Discord for it, and just a couple were missed. But I think the best thing you can do as a Disc Priest here is dot and spread your dot with a Penance, and then go straight into a Rapture covering the group. And we are kind of just vamping here without a full team. It's going to be a little bit hard. So Paints Up just to buy 8 seconds of time, keeping all of my dots active. Wow, he just joined combat and died again. Sucks. So since we're still a team of 3, I don't think I hold back here. Let's see what I do. I think I'm ramping for my Mindbender. Yeah, there we go. So we just had our 4th teammate join us.
5,
I probably could have held Mindbender. He wasn't necessary at that point. And it looks like I had about 6 seconds of loss or more. But sometimes when you have party members dead, you really just need to drop all of your spells available in order to pick up the recovery. Alright, so same thing here. Open with a couple of dots, rapturing the whole group. And I open my Rapture on the tank first. And that's so that I can return to him with another Rapture, picking up a little bit more value. So ramping my Harsh Discipline. Atonements are out. Fresh Dot. Mindbender. Divine Star at the top. And for this one, I picked up my 5th Torment just by waiting for my target mob to drop. Didn't have to switch or anything. I will say I am eager for explosives to pass. I think it's so much fun, our rotation with Mindbender, and having to play explosives just is such a hindrance to our rotation. But that's how it goes. Okay, we have PI. Let's see if we drop it here or if we hold. PI on the Monk. Harsh Discipline is ramped. Mindbender. Mind Blast Penance. Star. Mind Games. Mind Blast. So on that one, I was trying to hold off on my Shadow or Death. I pushed it to the back of my window, hoping someone would drop into execute range, and no one did. And I think that was our first Mass Dispel of the whole dungeon, but we had a 4-stack there, pre-cast my Mass Dispel, avoided as much damage as possible. Same on this group, I'm calling in Discord help with orbs, coating the entire group in thick shields, and I was just pre-ramping my Harsh Discipline, trying to get it ready for the backside of that attack. Looks like I dropped the Harsh Discipline. Yeah, so for this one, I'm out of mana, I'm noticing. So I just go into my Mindbender without a Harsh Discipline banked. Just getting what I can from it. So that was a fairly bad Shadow Covenant window. I think I was stressed without having mana. I think we had an orb go off. So I was just trying to get into the Mindbender for the mana regen, and I ended up dropping, I think, 1 or 2 Torments. I'm not even sure if I got a Penance. But sometimes you just got to get into it.
No, I cannot face my ancestors.
Looks like we got one more group. I always like using that fast boost over. I don't know anyone else doesn't. So I saw Zwin was dying. We don't need that, so I tossed him a heal. Especially since he had PI. And for this one, I had Rapture available. But I think I tried switching priorities, just getting orbs, helping the transition. But Harsh Discipline is banked. Fresh Dot. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant, Schism. Mind Blast, Penance. Picked up a 5th Torment off that execute. And I got both Dark Reprimands. And I'm learning more and more how much of a friend Radiance is in our book. I think in Shadowlands, I tried not casting Radiance too much, but I think it's a better spell for us now. So casting Radiance, yeah, just do it. Harsh Discipline is ramped. Atonements are out. Mindbender. Mind Blast. Penance. Star. And then I worked in a Radiance just for coverage. So it's after you put your first Mind Blast and Penance on cooldown, you have a little bit of freedom to work in your Atonement spells depending on the situation, that might just be dropping your buffed shield. Or a situation like this where you just want to make sure everyone lives, you work in Irradiance. And I think the most important part about working in Irradiance is that you're not having any downtime in your casting. That's the most important part of our window, is making sure you're always casting without any gaps. So let's ramp our Harsh Discipline. Ramping with 2 Mind Blasts just to get those rolling. Mindbender. So when you're in your Shadow Covenant window, there was a Radiance. I think it's okay if 1 or 2 orbs go off. But I am calling in Discord, hey, I'm ramping. And that's just me kind of asking my team to grab 1 or 2. That Master Spell could have been a little bit quicker, but that's okay. Wow, he got 8 up. Okay, so on this one it looks like I failed my ramp, and I don't think it was because I needed to get there quicker. I think I just failed my ramp. Yeah, that wasn't good. I had a Dark Reprimand there I could have dropped. I think I was distracted. I'm not sure what was going on there, but it looked like I just wasn't paying attention. But we still have good spells in our book we can use even outside of Dark Reprimand. However, outside of Dark Reprimand, I hard focus orbs because I am going to be doing less.
Marked by lightning.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, that just wasn't a good pull for me. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Yikes. But we have PI available, bosses incoming, all spells are ready, non-tyrannical. So we have these centaurs. So when it comes to our spell placement, I want to Rapture for the first Gale Arrow and have a Harsh Discipline queued up and ready for a Shadow Covenant after. There's our PI on our monk. Here comes the Gale Arrow. And it's not a bad idea to go into your Rapture early. You don't necessarily need the Rapture to cover the arrow, but you need to make sure everyone is full health when it goes out. So casting a Rapture kind of early just ensures that everyone's topped and healthy for that attack. And also you'll notice in party we have these white dotted lines going out. That is the target of their arrow attack. I think a really great use of our buffed shields from 4-piece in this fight is just making sure you're dropping that after every penance proc. And I wouldn't really drop that proc on the tank. He's not really in much danger at all. But if you can drop that proc on yourself or a DPS, it will get fully used. This fight is quite reactionary, but it's not too hard. So we barrier on this one, and I precast a Radiance. So people were atoned already, which only means the Radiance will hit harder, but the quicker you can recover lost health like that, the better. And a Radiance that's precast is a really nice way just to jump people's health back up.
Away from him.
So the way it looks now is Rapture is back available. Here comes my Rapture.
Wind guides my arrows.
I don't know what happened there with that tornado, but it was a good thing I had some help. I had wall up. And that boss wasn't too bad. I do think it's a little tricky for discipline because it's a very reactionary type fight. But we have reactionary spells, it's just not our strength. So things like Flash Heal are great. Tossing out your buffed shields is great. Again, I think just throwing that shield on yourself is always a great move. It makes you quite a bit tanky, and you'll pretty much live through anything, especially if you have a wall up. So we have 6.5 minutes, not too much time here. Levitate in for style points, and get in a drink. I am thirsty for mana. So we do have PI. This is a fortified pull, which is pretty long. It's worth PI. Mage Qs, there we go. Ramping my Harsh Discipline. Mindbender, Shadow Covenant. Schism, Mind Blast Penance. Divine Star where they were stacked. And there was my second Dark Reprimand. Exactly what we want. And the boss you can Mind Soothe, he's humanoid. Nice to just keep a soothe on him just in case. Opens up the playing field a little bit. And that was total bullshit because you can watch the replay. I was definitely out of his line of sight on his backside even. So like why that hit me, I don't know, that's bullshit. And also in Bigwigs, if anyone wants to submit this to the developers for me, the Vehement Charge or whatever it's called is not something Bigwigs is loaded with. And I think it needs to be. It'd be really helpful if I could hear an audible on that cast. And I should probably do that with at least a weak aura, if nothing else. But that charge, you need to be aware of it. But yeah, I wasn't in its way. That was bullshit that it killed me. So on this boss, we have a preferred lay of spells as well. The best place for your Rapture is going to be the upheavals. Let's see how this goes. PIs in 15 seconds. It's always tricky when you have spells come up mid-combat. You really have to keep an eye on them. But you definitely want to roll your Mindbender here on cooldown. You can get at least 2 windows.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Had a really nice shield for the Warlock there. Oh, wasn't big enough. So we had an overlap of mechanics there. I don't think my grip caused that. I think he was just outplayed a little bit. And that was my Rapture Q, but the death kind of threw me off a little bit. But here's our second Mindbender. Again, you want to just roll this on cooldown. You want to get as many as you can. Another shield on the lock. He loved it. But you should be able to get 2 Mindbenders in the front. Yeah, that was good. So in this phase, we definitely want a barrier and we want to get our dots out. And since I have Rapture, I think I go Rapture here. Yeah. I Rapture, I stayed in my barrier as long as I could.
5.
So I think the play would be to Mindbender there. I guess I'm not totally sure the best rotation. I'm not even sure if it was available yet. I'd have to watch that back. for this Shadow Covenant window, we were all about to get pulled, so I worked in my Radiance before the attack, even though it wasn't optimal, just that I could flood heals after. Also very important, our tank has Dispels now. You want to get those off quickly. And for that upheaval, it was really nice that I had a single shield for myself. Again, that is a great place to drop your single shield. Also, on this half of the fight, pretty much dropping your Rapture anywhere is great. And also, I try and pre-feather myself, and you'll see right there that one, like, I was gripped away from it and I was left on the ground. But I like to pre-feather myself so I can just very quickly step out of the way. Alright, Shadow Covenant's over. We have Rapture to use. Yep, going into a Rapture. So the Rapture on this side is great for the upheaval, and it's also great for the spear. So, yeah, just dropping Rapture when you have it, you're likely to get full use of it. Pre-feather. Run out of the way. And this, we almost got into he almost reset, so you have to really be careful to keep him in the arena. Bosses are known to kind of be tethered to where they start. But that was it. It was a pretty clean run. I've been having a lot of fun playing with Yasmin. I believe I'm about to hit 2800 today. Cross your fingers for me. But I will just give you a heads up for next week. I might not get a video out until the weekend, if at all. I will be out of town in Houston for a fire performance gig. So if you're in the Houston area and you want to see some really cool fire spinning, on Valentine's Day at Discovery Green Park, you can come out. I have 3 shows at 6:30, 7:30, and 8:30, and it'll be pretty cool. But glancing at the meters really quick, we had quite a bit of avoidable damage in this key from the static shock going out. But for orbs, me and Yasmin are really taking the brunt force of that affix, and I kind of think that's how it should be. And then looking at my damage overall, I'm at 26.8 thousand per second, which is a really great number. And I think I pull it up here in a second. Yep. So here's a display of my spread or whatever. So Purge the Wicked, Mind Blast, Torments are at the top. I always look at my Crystalline Reflection, and this one is right over 1 million, which is something I like. And you'll notice I've switched to the Glacial Fury potion. I kind of think that's the way to go for DPS. And you'll see my Dark Reprimand is soaring above my Penance, and that's kind of what you want. And yeah, so thanks everyone for tuning in. And until next time, Disc out.